Hello, and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I always leave space for Jello.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss The Blob, which came out in 1988 from director Chuck Russell. Iain, why don't you give us the synopsis?
Well, the town of Arborville in America is about to get a gruesome awakening. A meteorite has crashed on the outskirts, and what appears to be a jelly-like creature has started to eat the townspeople. Two teens, Brian and Meg, have to convince all of the adults that this is happening, while the creature continues to grow.
I've always been a big fan of this film, Iain, and I'm kind of half a fan of the director.
Okay.
The director Chuck Russell made one of my favourite sequels of all time, A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. Unfortunately, he would go on to direct The Mask and The Scorpion King. But, you know, when he was making The Blob, he had a co-writer who is also one of my favourite filmmakers.
Okay.
Frank Darabont.
Nice.
You know, who would do The Shawshank Redemption,
Yeah.
Green Mile, The Walking Dead, The Mist. And the two of them collaborated on this film, and they wanted to bring the 1950s kind of horror sci-fi monsters,
Yeah.
you know, to the modern world.
Yeah.
And I think they pulled it off spectacularly well with The Blob.
Yeah. I saw the original first. Back in the day, it was kind of weird how this all worked out. I was in my teenage years. I was watching horror movies. Your Freddys, your Jasons, but Channel 4 over here did like a couple of weekends of classic 1950s sci-fi movies. It was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was able to catch The Thing from Another World. I was able to catch the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And, I caught the original The Blob along with others. And I thought it was really good. I had this whole kind of 5-weekender of classic sci-fi movies. So watching all these different movies kind of made me want to see the remakes. Because I kept seeing the poster in my local video store for The Blob. But I wasn't old enough to rent it. And then a couple of weeks after seeing the original TV, it turned up on TV, the remake. And it was late at night, The Blob, Channel 3, and I'm like, shit, I'm in on that. I'm getting the trailer but advertisement through the TV adverts.
Yeah.
So the TV is really selling this to me that I have to be awake. And it kind of takes you back to the 1950s where you had those kids sat in front of the TV, where the TV's kind of willing you on to stay awake, kids, to see this next sci-fi, installment. So I stayed up to watch The Blob, and oh my god, I fucking love this movie.
Yeah. Rewatching it, I was quite surprised at the opening of the film, where it's a completely deserted town.
Man, made me think of the Tommyknockers.
Right.
Like, I was just like, are we in the Tommyknocker universe? I'm pretty sure I put The Blob in, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, this film has had several links to Stephen King's work.
Right.
There's characters in the film, like Kevin Dillon plays Brian Flagg.
Yeah.
Flagg is the villain from The Stand.
Yeah, I've got it right.
The waitress's name is Penny, and it's been said, that's because of Pennywise. There's quite a lot of little connections to Stephen King, but Frank Darabont, big fan of Stephen King as well. So
yeah, but we kind of, once the credits are out of the way, we just get the town, and it takes me back to the original. You've got this small town, the high school jock Paul, played by Donovan Leitch. Really fancies. I'm guessing it's the head cheerleader, Meg, played by the amazing Shawnee Smith. And like I said, just like the original, I just come off the back of watching the original when I first saw the remake. So watching this, I'm like, oh yeah, these are the teens. They're going to see the creature, and they're going to be telling everybody, and the creature's going to go around. No, I wasn't ready.
No. Well, we get to see the meteorite crash.
Yeah.
And we see Tin Can Man, who again is another reference to Stephen King's Stand.
Yeah.
And he goes wandering out to find out what it is. He had his encounter with Brian earlier, where he was trying to do his motorcycle stunt jump across the broken bridge.
Yeah, Kevin Dillon. You kind of know that this film was set in the late 80s when you look at Kevin Dillon's hair.
Right. And of course, he fails to do the bike jump.
Yeah.
But he has that encounter with the old man who's collecting the tin cans. And when he's breaking the tin cans down, I love the fact that he's got the taped frying pan to his foot while he's stomping them. But he goes wandering off to see what it is, and just like the original film, grabs a big stick and starts prodding it.
Oh, yeah. That's what you do with meteorites, isn't it? And glowing substances in it.
Prod it with a stick.
Well, you got to do it before the army turns up, because they're like 5 minutes long.
Yeah, they got bigger sticks. And of course, he tries to pick it up, and it slides all the way down the stick right onto his hand. And he starts screaming and panicking, and the next time we see him, he kind of wanders out into the road.
Oh, yeah.
And gets run over. He's, of course, being chased by Brian, who runs him right into the other couple.
Well, I love the whole aspect of Brian Flagg is the town bad boy. You know, he we've already had his introduction through the sheriff, Sheriff Geller, where, you know, Brian's like a year away or a couple of months away from his next birthday. So the next time Brian breaks the law, he's going straight to jail. And the sheriff's happy about that. The sheriff, played by Jeffrey DeMunn, you know, Dale from The Walking Dead. I love how, you know, before the meteorite actually crashes, we do get just all the build up of all the different characters. You know, we meet Meg, we meet Paul, we meet the sheriff, we meet bad boy Brian. So, you know, you're already settled in. Like, if you've seen the original, you're like, oh yeah, I know how this goes. You know, here it comes. The blob comes down and it crashes. It gets onto the old man's arm, and when Meg and Paul rush to take him to the hospital, you're like, right, the blob does its thing, and then it escapes, and so we're all ready for that. No, I wasn't. The first time Paul pulls back that cover when they've got the old man in the bed, and it's just supposed to be a hand injury. You know, watch out whatever is on his arm, because it looks like acid. When they pull back that cover and half his body is gone...
That's fantastic.
It's fucking fantastic.
It's the fact that it's still steaming.
Oh yeah. You know, it did start to make, like, I do have a question about the blob for later in the review. I will try to remember when it comes up. But you know, when you see all this guts and the old man there, you know, people are still kind of stood there like, what did that? I'm like, whatever it is, burn the fucking building. You know, this is get the fuck
out.
And Paul, you know, your main hero, Paul, like, we knew he was a good guy right off the bat because he'd been in the local chemist with his buddy, and his buddy wanted to buy some condoms because he was going to get laid. But Paul, you know, being the high school jock, the blue collar boy, he just wants to take this cheerleader out, and it just so happens, coincidentally, her dad. Meg's dad is the head chemist, so there's a bit of a confrontation there, but it was all a misunderstanding, and Meg's gonna get with him. No, because fucking Paul runs into the doctor's office to call the police, and the blob lands on him.
You see that shot where he's talking to the police, and you see the door close behind him. Because the blob's going up the wall behind him. Yeah, and then that shot when he looks up, and the blob kind of opens up like a blanket.
Yeah.
And just envelops him. You know, you hear the muffled kind of gargled sounds.
Well, you hear him scream. You know, Meg gets up and heads out to find out. And so, for me, at this point, I was like... First time I watch it, I'm like, shit, they've just killed Steve McQueen off.
Right.
Like, I know Brian was kind of the bad boy, but first time watching it, I didn't realise that this was the way the film was going. Where they're dropping the blue-collar hero, because when Meg turns the corner, and I have never understood, but always been amazed how they made the blob effects in this film, because... Seeing Paul, that image of Paul in the blob with his arm out, you know, and everything is just melting
away from him, yeah,
and just being dragged off, and she grabs his arm. I'm thinking you're immediately fearful because you think she's going to get pulled in.
Right, yeah.
You know, but the blob is halfway out the window trying to make its escape, and it just melts through his arm and pulls his whole body as she knocks herself out. And
it's the fact that you see his face melting backwards.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that when she drops his arm on the floor and they do the kind of...
Still twitching.
Where you can see, you know, seeing the film on Blu-ray now, you can actually see the crack in the floor where, you know, the actor's arm is actually underneath the floor.
Yeah.
And so give you the twitching fingers effect.
Watched it on VHS, didn't see that.
Yes, yeah. And I've got to say, the practical effects still look fantastic today.
Yes.
Like, the effects in the film were done by Tony Gardner. he's worked on small practical effects throughout his career, but the only other big film that he's done is Zombieland, doing all the zombie effects. But I mean, he's still working in practical effects and visual effects throughout his entire career. And the Blobs, I put right up there next to Rob Bottin.
Oh yeah,
from
next to the Thing. Yeah, I always do as well.
It's phenomenal.
Like, yeah, I saw the Blob after the Thing, and when I saw these effects, I'm like, that's just amazing.
That actually gave me nightmares, as a child seeing that. It's just like, god damn.
Yeah.
On subsequent reviewings, I would always shield my eyes from that sequence because it was so horrifying.
It is. It's devastating. But like I said, coming off the back of seeing the original, I'm like, whoa. I know late 80s horror wanted to push the envelope, but you've just taken this B-movie sci-fi horror and just elevated it to like 11. Like you said, same with John Carpenter with The Thing. And now we're behind the teens because the teens know, Brian and Meg know what it is that's doing all this destruction, but the adults are not believing them, and so it
is one of they did it again with this one slightly where the cops turn up and there's like a severed arm, and they're like, Brian Flagg, you did this,
you killed him. You melted that old man out there, and then you cut off this boy's arm and stole his body. And Brian sat in the car like, what? But it works with this one because with Meg, she is the homecoming queen, Shawnee Smith's character, and everybody kind of respects her and believes her. She's not a liar, and so she's there not being believed.
Yeah,
and so it kind of works towards the hatred toward Brian Flagg because. Like, we hear from the sheriff, he's got like a deputy and 6 people. He is not equipped to deal with this at all. Fucking at all. I love his deputy, played by Paul McCrane, who I recognise as Emilio from fucking RoboCop.
Absolutely.
I love that sequence as well in the police station where him and Brian are really up close and Brian just licks his face. He's like, hit me, come on, hit me. I'm like, yeah, Brian. Fucking get some. Another name I want to drop in here is Michael Kenworthy, who plays Kevin, Meg's brother. He's not really a big name star, but I always recognise him from Return of the Living Dead Part 2.
Right.
One of my favourite Return of the Living Dead movies. But Kevin is sneaking out to the cinema with his buddy Eddie. And Eddie's brother, Anthony, is going to get them into this new screening of this new slasher horror movie. And I love that whole little motif there. That the kids are sneaking into the cinema to watch this film. And obviously, if you've seen the original Blob, the Blob loves going to the cinema too.
But before we get to the cinema, we've got ourselves a small case of date rape.
Oh, yeah.
As we have this couple, which we had been introduced to earlier, drinking out in the middle of nowhere, looking over the town.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that he's like, well, she's half passed out drunk. And he's like, well, I guess you need some more because you're not quite putting out for me yet.
Well,
and you get that scene where he opens up the back of his car. And he's got like his own little mini bar in there. I was like, how did you drive out here and none of that fell over?
Well, I mean, I he probably all had it carefully. This isn't his first time.
He's got his own little mixer.
Yeah, this is Paul's friend Scott, who was after the ribbed Johnnies earlier in the movie. And yeah, this girl Vicky, played by the gorgeous Erika Eleniak.
You recognise her from anywhere?
Yeah, I recognise her majorly from Under Siege.
Good call.
Oh, Baywatch.
Oh yeah.
Mainly Under Siege, though. But yeah, so Scott is just trying to get with her, and you get that great little POV shot of
the blob,
in the grass, moving his way up, and you know what the fuck it is. You know that as it gets into the car, that bitch is dead, but you don't know how fucking dead she is. And so when Scott returns to the car, and he's just like, "Oh, she's passed out." Oh,
you a little hot in here.
Yeah, you want me to undo one of those buttons there? Oh. And I always remember watching this part, like, was always uncomfortable. Like, like back in the day when I was younger, I was uncomfortable because I knew the blob was in there. But as I got older, it was the way the scene was implied of, like you said, the date rape, the unconsensual, touchy-feely motif. And so watching it again for the review, I'm like, oh man, this bit's fucking awkward. And then when the blob just fucking all up in his face.
The fact that her face turns inside out.
And crushes, and then bits of the blob comes out, and he's screaming, and you know he's fucking not going.
But I mean, this is the first time we see the blob spit out tentacles.
Yeah, well, tentacles just appendages, like it can make arms.
Yeah.
But I suppose in the original, I don't remember in the original the blob was able to do that. It just was just a big ball of jam, kind of rolling around everywhere. Where this one, it needed a bit more intelligence, or it always had intelligence. We just needed to see it. So to trap this guy, like this is my question about the blob as the film goes on. Can the blob choose what it disintegrates? Like, going back to the old man in the bed, like, it melted that old man, but didn't melt the bed. Everything from the stomach down.
When the blob was on the ceiling, it was dropping acid splops on
onto the desk, but not melting the ceiling. And so now with this sequence in the car, like, it invaded her body, or it hid by her, and chose not to melt her until it got him into the car, and then melted him, melted her, his clothes, but not the car. So the car didn't explode. Like, I know it like, I totally believe it feeds on human flesh.
Yeah.
And can grow larger in mass when it
consuming
human flesh. But I also believe that it also can melt fucking anything else it chooses.
Yeah.
It just can't consume it. Like a wall. Like how it's not really going to eat plaster.
Yeah, it depends on how corrosive it really is on certain substances.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it doesn't utilise the fact that it can melt things down very much in the film at all.
No, it does fully utilise its intelligence, because we watch now the blob invade the sewers of the town, and we know that it's going back to the town because that's what the film kind of
It's a food source there.
Yeah. But Meg is having pretty much the nightmares. She saw what this thing did to Paul, and she wants to find out and stop it. But her parents are kind of trying to sedate her. She needs sleep. So she escapes out towards...
she heads to the police station to go and free Brian, who's been locked up because they're blaming him for the murders. Even though they actually let him go when Sheriff realises there's actually no evidence to keep him here.
Yeah. So Brian and Meg head to the diner, and Brian gets given some free food, and the two of them start discussing about it. And I love this little sequence, actually. Everything with the blob, I kind of forgot for this moment, and it took me back to the original where, Brian is playing the atypical bad boy and is just telling Meg that she's fucking crazy, even though he knows.
Yeah.
And she blatantly just calls him a fucking bastard, and that he's no better than anybody else in this town, even though he pretends that he's different. And it's a switch in Brian, like, oh fuck, I've overstepped my mark.
Right.
He's not really a bad guy. He's just had a bit of a bad upbringing. And he does just need kind of one moment to prove himself to everybody.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's gonna get with Meg, because she's fucking hot. And he's got the hair as well. But the fucking sink moment. Oh my god, this movie gets better and better.
She takes the plates back out into the kitchen.
Yeah.
Realises it's blocked up. She tries to use the plunger.
And
You know what's going on. And you see the guy, he grabs the plunger, he's like, let me handle that, I can do that.
Yeah.
And he's just looking down the sinkhole, and that's it. The blob just launches itself onto his face, grabs a hold of him, and pulls him headfirst into the sink in just a couple of seconds. You see him kind of flailing and panicking for a little bit, but then you see the pipe kind of expand open.
The crushing noise, because the blob must be seriously melting him at the same time as pulling him and breaking him and fucking bits. bits.
Because by the time they come back in, there's just feet and hands
Yeah.
sticking out of the sink.
Yeah.
I'm like, that poor bastard's dead already. But
He fucking dead. And then the blob launches itself up onto the ceiling. Now, this has always been one of the points in the movie where I go, it suffers. Is the application of the blob effect in the background of the actors. So we see like Meg and Brian running to the freezer, and we see the blob moving along the ceiling. Now, I never know if they intentionally made it look like that to pay homage back to the original.
I doubt it.
Or if just effects at the time meant that that's the best that they could do.
Yeah.
That it just looks...
It looks superimposed. It does look fake. But, I'm forgiving of it after what we've just witnessed.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. I'm like, it's just telling me they're running to the freezer. And, they get into the freezer. But you know the blob can't handle cold. And hearing the noise of it squealing as it hits the cold and then moves away. I'm like,
where's that noise coming from?
Bubbles. The thing can make bubbles.
Right. But it left behind a few little crystallized kind of things.
Yeah.
Did it freeze and part of it drop off?
Yeah, I've always imagined the blob kind of like the thing is like every little part is an entity.
Yes.
But unlike the thing, or maybe like thing, we don't still know how that works. The blob, everything it consumes, it creates mass, which means it can get bigger. But Fran has smashed the window of the restaurant and jumped outside and run out to the phone booth to call the sheriff, because he's on his way and she needs needs him to see this. And, oh man, Dale, you never had it good, did you? Dale never had it good.
No.
Ever. Because we see him kind of slide past because the blob has started to consume the phone booth and has already consumed the sheriff as well.
Yeah. I'm like, it's a shame that he got killed off screen, but that puppet, that face pressed up against the glass, that's terrifying. It's the fact that his eyes are still kind of moving.
It just plays in well because you hear the woman on the radio like, oh no, the sheriff's on his way to the diner. And there he is. And you're like, oh shit. Because it's another authority figure that's just been cut off.
Yeah.
Who else can they turn to?
I know. I mean, I like the sheriff, and I like the waitress. And then seeing her in that phone booth, the blob completely surrounded it. And you're just like, just push up against the doors. Just stay pushed.
Yeah, you'll be safe.
But the blob is either melting its way in or it's just coming, the pressure is breaking itself through.
I've always wanted to know if that's a dummy. When the blob,
it hits, yes,
because it hits with such force.
Yes,
if that's an actress in there.
Yeah, well, you see her arms end up flailing. Yeah,
her head hits
she gets
the
thrown around.
And just the whole thing just gets completely crushed.
It's truly devastating. Like, damn, the blob is not pulling any punches at all.
But the local priest has spotted the blob and watched it walk into the sewers, and Brian and Meg have made their escape as well. And the priest finds little particles of the blob, like you said, in the snow. I never liked the priest.
No.
I don't. Maybe it's just me and religious figures I just don't like. But he's got a look about him that just says weirdo right from the bat. But Brian and Meg have got information to find the deputy because they've got to tell him that fucking. This thing is killing people, and they can't find the sheriff either. And this is where we are introduced to the military figures, because Brian and Meg come across them, and we're introduced to Dr. Meadows, who's the head researcher of a scientific program that has been monitoring objects falling from the sky. And they noticed this meteorite crash, and they believe that some kind of organism, some kind of alien organism, is on board, paying homage back to the original one. And that they obviously want to stop it or contain it because it could contaminate the whole entire town. And Brian and Meg are like, contaminate? Fucking contaminate? What the fuck? And you get the feeling that there's something not right here with the military.
Well, it's because it's kind of a staple of the genre, really, isn't
Yeah.
it? You can't trust them.
No, you never did back in the 50s. Like I
Yeah.
said, and it's what threw me off with this one. Back in the 50s, the military was always the good guys. They turned up, right toward the end, last half hour, flamethrower and shot the alien creature, and the Earth was saved.
Yeah, yeah.
That was always the kind of the motif. I mean, in the Blob, yeah, it's something particular, but the army was still there to kind of hold it back.
Brian and Meg are talking to the scientist who just explains, like, yeah, we're going to quarantine the town. Everything's going to be all right.
Yeah,
we're going to put you in the back of the truck and take you into town with all the other people. And Brian kind of opposes it, but then is kind of forced into the back of the truck.
Yeah.
And while he's in the back of the truck with Meg, he's just like, fuck this. And he breaks out.
Yeah.
Literally jumps out, and Meg's like, no, I'm going back to town.
Well, he's the bad boy rebel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so he decides to go back to where the scientist compound was and listen in. And that's where we find out that the Blob isn't an alien. It's not a visitor from another dimension.
No.
It is literally a science experiment.
Yeah. I always loved that twist in this one. I was I suppose that's what I always wanted with this, was that there had to be a twist. There'd been a twist in The Thing, and there had been a twist in the remake Invasion of the Body Snatchers. So this one needed its own little thing as well. And so when it turned out that it was a military project, I'm like, I applaud that. Because they show us the capsule that this thing came in, and the general's talking about, well, this will be years ahead of the military, and you're like, this is why you don't train xenomorphs, because this Blob thing is not a good weapon.
No, it's like, so, well, great, we've weaponized the Blob. Let's go and, let's go and drop it on Russia. Yeah, what a great idea.
Yeah, but
release the Blob.
But the weird thing is, if you know how to defeat it, it wouldn't destroy any. It wouldn't really destroy any buildings or vehicles. So it would just wipe out the people.
Right.
So that, kind of works. But as long as you've got control of this thing, and I don't think these guys have got control of this fucking thing, because
they think they do.
Yeah. Because we now get to one of the best moments where the thing. I almost said The Thing there, Gary.
Yeah.
I'm on the wrong movie. I mean to say The Blob.
It is a thing.
Yeah. The Blob has decided to go to the cinemas, and you remember in the original one, it got in there and all the people started running out. So you're like, oh my God, that's what I'm waiting for. But we see the film projectionist, Phil Hobbs, played by Frank Collison, who, he appears in a lot of films. He's one of those guys. He's that guy. He's complaining that it's too hot up in there, and there's something in the air vent blocking it, and he needs to take a look. But we know what it is, don't we, people? We know. And even though you just hear his initial scream that you're like, no, that's not fair. It's when the other guy walks in.
You recognise that guy, Iain?
No.
That's the lead wheeler from Return to Oz.
Oh, man. Another classic. That's another classic. Well, when you see that wheel squeal down next to him.
Then he just looks up and sees him stuck to the ceiling. He's melting away. He's still alive. It's like,
trying to pull himself out. I've always loved that that effect of you've melted so much and you've gone so spongy that you can kind of pull yourself further than what naturally your body should do. And the Blob just goes, yeah, I'm going to eat you some more.
And then just sends the tentacles down and picks up the other guy.
Yeah.
But we also cut to the actual film being shown in the cinema.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a Friday the 13th kind of knockoff movie.
Yeah.
Where you got two kids making out and you got some guy trimming the bushes.
Well, it's a bit late at night to be trimming the bushes, isn't it?
But you've got that asshole
that
sat right behind the two kids just talking the entire time. So he's the first fucker to die.
Oh.
You just see him get yoinked out of his seat.
Yoink.
And you see the Blob up against the back wall of the cinema.
Yeah.
And there's lots of strobe lighting here, so you can't really see it very well.
No, it's not.
But you can just see tentacles just sort of picking people up out of the audience.
Yeah, I kind of work towards the fact that whenever I've seen that effect of something reaching forward and picking something else up, like a person, they always look like dolls.
Yes.
They always look like dolls. You can never get away from it. So the strobe effect in the cinema, is supposed to get your heart racing, but also to hide the fact that they had to show a lot of people getting eaten, but it wasn't going to look very good.
It's like almost the POV shot of the Blob, where it's at the bottom of
Yeah.
the shot.
Yeah.
And you see the tentacles, and it's just sort of dropping people in front of itself, or they
Yeah,
just sort of
just-
disappear
Just
into it.
pulling into him. I do like it when Meg is pulling people over.
Yeah.
You know, in the aisles, and you see half of them
See,
melted.
I was confused with that because I mean, it's a great effect when she
Yeah.
pulls that woman back and her face is melting to the floor. I'm
Yeah.
like, did the Blob pick her up and drop her for some reason, and therefore part of the Blob is still melting her?
Maybe,
Like,
yeah.
How? Why is it not consuming her? Is that the Blob that's on her face?
Like, what if a little bit of the blob got on you and started
Yeah.
melting you? Would it get bigger
As it was-
melted,
yes,
as it would
'cause it
eat
would be consuming
And every
you, yeah.
time you tried to pull it off, it just broke into and melted you even more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just a curiosity. It's just one of those things where you're just like, how does it work?
yeah. But Meg, Eddie, and Kevin and Eddie were secretly at the cinema, have all escaped out into the alleyway to get away from the blob. And Eddie's brother, Anthony, who would go on to become one of the Frog Brothers in the Lost Boys, watches them escape into the sewers. Now, I love the fact that he was looking down at this point and the blob must have gone up there, but the blob didn't attack him, and he just ran outside and didn't really tell anybody. His brothers literally just ran into the sewers. I know the military are out there being a bit cold-hearted bastards at this point, you know, but he would have at least got some of the townspeople to help them.
Right.
Because Brian's escaped from the military after hearing the information that the town is expendable. All they are after is the creature. And so after doing the jump that we'd seen him fail at the beginning and escaping into the sewers, he chases after to rescue Meg. But this is one of the better moments of the film, but also shows off some of the weaknesses of the film, where Meg, Eddie, and Kevin are trying to escape from the blob, and Eddie is grabbed, and I always are fucking shit up when she jumps in the water after him.
Right.
Like, what the fuck? I know he's a kid. Like, yeah, we would try, but fuck that for a laugh, you know? And she comes back, and Eddie comes back out the water.
Yeah, half melted, still screaming, and it's only for a second before he's pulled right back under again. You know, I mean, yeah, you want to rescue kids, you don't want to see kids die in a movie, but like I said, the blob just kills anyone. Like it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it is horrifying, but at the same time, I'm like, Meg, are you suicidal?
Yeah.
Because there's no way you would be in there.
She's becoming a new kind of Ripley kind of badass character. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
we don't, in a weird way, we kind of don't need Brian. But, like I said, it showed the weak point of the movie where the blob now starts to come out of the water.
It forms like
Like a shape.
yeah.
But the effect isn't very good. Like the superimposed image on the back. Like I said, we kind of forgave it earlier because it was kind of quick and we just seen the sync one. But as the blob starts to get bigger and we start to see it more on screen, it starts to become a weakness of the film. For me, anyway, because the effect doesn't work well.
I don't know, when I see it in the sewer with its big gaping maw, I'm just like, that's even more terrifying, because like, it's waiting for you to fall into it, so it can literally
Yeah.
just encase you.
But then the military turn up and shoot it, which hurts it. And so it then decides to attack the military. And Meg falls into the water. She just literally just lets go. Instead of climbing down safely, she just goes, ah!
I know, I'm like, the blob was there like 2 seconds
Exactly,
ago.
that's what I'm saying. I start to really notice the problems with the effects now. And she tries to escape from the blob up a little sewer escape and gets hold of Brian. Brian rides them off on his dirt bike, and they come to a dead end, and they have to ride back again at a certain angle around the blob.
Yeah.
Which once again superimposed on the top. I'm like, okay, just going with it at this moment. And they crash, but they are trapped in the sewers by Dr. Meadows. You know, he's like, we've got it trapped in the sewers. It's a network of tunnels under there. It's not trapped. It's actually probably better at ambushing you than you are of it.
Right.
You know, but Bill Moseley turns up in the sewers.
Bill Moseley is in so many horror films. And
Yeah.
you don't always recognize him, but that's the guy from Devil's Reject.
That's it. You know, he's here to do devil's work, which is kind of cry in the corner and carry a rocket launcher, which is great because that's exactly what Brian
I think
was
he
after.
forgot he was even carrying it.
But Brian nails the rocket launcher into the sewers.
He shoots the manhole cover,
Yeah.
doesn't he? Yeah, which causes a big explosion. The truck that was parked on top of it explodes.
Dr. Meadows, he wants Brian dead at this point. He's like, kill him! We need to
It's
kill
because
him!
he knows the truth.
We need to contain it, and Brian knows the truth. And now everybody starts pointing guns at each other, but the Blob grabs Dr. Meadows, pulls him to the sewers, and then just
Gets
consumes
inside
him.
his suit.
Yeah.
I love that shot where the Blob fills his mask.
And then the suit is just empty and falls inside. But this is where the general's like, right, Bucket, we're going to scrag this son of a bitch. And throws, bullets and explosives into the sewers to burn this thing. And I'm like, that's not going to work.
At first, he's just like, yeah, done deal. Like, walking away like, boss. Then, of course, the ground shakes, and it's not long before the Blob literally explodes up through the sewer. And I love that shot where he just turns around and he sees it, and he clicks up both grenade pins as
And
the
that
Blob
fucking
just
tongue thing just kind of flops
falls
onto
yeah.
it.
I love that because in the next shot you see the flashes of the grenades going off
Yeah.
inside the Blob. I was like, that did nothing.
Yeah. I always like the little kind of arm bit that lands on a person and then comes back up, and you can just make out the flat
print of him,
the flat print on the inside of the Blob. You're really looking at the effect, and yeah, it's not great, but like Gary said, you can kind of forgive it because I'm in that 1950s motif now, late 80s horror movie. I don't care now that the only way you can defeat this thing is through snow, and luckily the town's got a snow blower machine.
An ice maker type thing, yeah.
Yeah, in a garage.
And so Brian goes and steals it. And...
Well, we were pre-warned about it right at the beginning, but
yeah.
while he's going to get that, it's just the destruction that the Blob kind of lays waste.
Most of the residents are in the church or in
The
a
town
museum.
hall.
In
Yeah,
the town hall. And unfortunately, our deputy, who's shooting at the Blob through the window.
Oh, no.
Great death sequence where it kind of grabs him around the waist.
Oh, yeah.
It snaps him backwards and pulls him through. It's like, damn, that was a really good effect.
That
Like, I
motherfucker
couldn't
dead.
tell where the edit was, how they did it.
Yeah. Great effect to kill that guy. But the priest as well. The priest had been burnt
Set
at
on
this
fire,
point.
yeah.
Because the military had tried to use a flamethrower to burn the Blob, and the Blob had just plunged its tentacle into the end of the flamethrower, and the whole thing had just gone up.
Yeah.
And you're waiting for now Brian to turn up with the snow machine, and he drives it down towards the Blob. He tries to freeze it, but the Blob hits him, or he drives into it.
Yeah.
Which I was just like, well, that just doesn't compute. I'd at least try to lure it away from the people. And Meg comes out to rescue him because she sees Brian trapped inside the
truck, yeah.
She looks hot as fuck when she stood on top of the ice machine. She's just set the explosive and she's got the M16 and she's just unloading. Come on, you son of a bitch! And you're like, yeah. But she drops that one-liner and smashes her face against the side of the container.
It's like you almost stole the film there.
Yeah.
And now you look like an idiot. But it's fine. She did her part.
Yeah.
It's like, and then Brian kind of manages to unhook her and pull her away from the blast.
Yeah, she needed to rescue Brian. Brian needed to rescue her. They needed it to be equal.
Yeah, so I like that.
Yeah.
And then, the truck explodes and the ice snow goes everywhere and the Blob is no more. You see the townspeople come out and there's just lots of crystals. And I'm like, you're all rich.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is, the Blob is still there. It's just frozen.
Yeah, well, you don't know that it's
still
alive.
Man, if you've seen the original, you fucking know.
Well, yeah, in the original, they kind of, they freeze it and then they fly it and drop it in the Arctic.
Right, exactly. That thing is still fucking alive. That thing needs to be fired into the sun. Or would it consume the sun? Maybe Neptune? Which one's the ice planet?
I think you could probably, with a strong enough acid, you could probably melt the Blob away.
But it would have to, but then it would have to be kind of alive, wouldn't it? Which means while you're trying to drop acid on it, it's trying to escape.
Yeah.
Because we cut to the priest. We don't even know how long this is. It's just
unknown time
time after the priest is having his own little sermon, and yeah, he looks even more fucked up than he did at the fucking other time of the film with the burnt side of his face, and he's talking about the apocalypse.
Yeah.
And he has a piece of the Blob in a glass jar. Now, the Blob's not breaking out, but it's alive, and it's, I suppose it could only get bigger if he allows it to consume something.
Yeah, see, that's where I'm just like, can it only consume organic material as glass and plastic? Can
Yeah.
it keep it, sealed?
Well, because it's so small, it can't break out of this yet. But what happens if he starts feeding it mice?
Exactly. Yeah, but that's the thing. That's the intention. It was open for a sequel. They were kind of hoping they would get a sequel.
Yeah.
But the studio, when the film was done, was just like, we're gonna only make a few prints and send it to a few cinemas and then forget about it.
It's a shame. It was a commercial failure.
Massively. The studios didn't want it, really. They were just like, this is a monster, gory, horrible monster movie. Let's put it in a few cinemas and let it die. And it was really on VHS that the film really found its audience.
Yeah.
Got a cult following, kind of like the original film.
Yeah.
But did you know that there was a Blob movie in between
No.
this one and the original? It has two names.
Return of the Blob?
Beware the Blob.
Oh, right, yeah.
Or Son of Blob. And it is direct-to-video awfulness. Like, it is one of the most awful, worst films you could imagine. That it kind of excels in its camp factor. Awful acting, awful camera work, awful effects, awful everything you can think of.
So it's out there with Hellraiser Judgment.
Probably better, actually. on that level.
Yeah.
But it's not a film that I would recommend to Blob fans unless you really
want
to see it. But it's just so terrible. But there is actually, and there has been for years now, a fourth Blob movie.
Right.
With Samuel L. Jackson and Halle Berry been cast in the film. And they've said that it's supposed to be less a horror movie and more a science fiction film where it's all about the scientists experimenting and working with the Blob. So
12
kind of, yeah.
12.
I doubt it will have the horror effects of this film.
Get this motherfucking Blob out of this motherfucking town, motherfucker.
So Ian, favourite scenes?
Well, I'm going to do this easy. Barring the restaurant sequence, the diner sequence between Brian and Meg, which I always really liked. That one sequence where they are just talking, like I said, reminds me of the original, takes me back, makes me feel good, makes me just, like I'm just settled into a B-movie sci-fi horror. Like it's really easy. I don't need to turn my brain off because there's sci-fi elements involved, but I can just sit back because the teens are going to save the day. And this little restaurant talking bit just kind of anchored their characters for me. Shawnee Smith really sells the Meg character, of this teen who's seen something really horrible and nobody believes her, and so she's wanting to do something about it. And Brian, who's been shat on pretty much all of his life, wants to basically just watch the whole town burn, but he's seeing something in Meg because she's seeing something in him, and I really like that. All of my other favourite scenes are the fucking Blob. Anything the Blob fucking touches is great. It kills indiscriminately. Kids, fucking girls. Like, this film teaches you not to touch girls who are fucking, asleep. Do not touch them. It teaches you not to sneak into movies. It teaches you not to talk about movies. It teaches you if you're going to fucking turn up on a date at 11 o'clock at a diner, ring before you turn up, just so that they know you're on your fucking way. The Blob is amazing. Maybe some of the special effects towards the end.
A little bit dated.
Yeah. But everything else, any of the gory kills.
Yeah.
A-O-fucking-K.
For sure. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. The Blob pulling that guy into the sink.
Yeah.
Devastating. The Blob surrounding the telephone booth with her inside.
Yeah, the yo-yo.
The hospital death with him surrounded by and the arm being extended. Yeah. I even liked the gag earlier with the dad kind of behind the newspaper when he pulls the newspaper down and realises that it's him.
Ribbed.
Yeah, I'm just like, there's a great little comedy moment in there. But I'll tell you what, I really did enjoy watching the film, and that is spotting the actor and connecting them to the other films.
Yeah.
And like I said, we had Shawnee Smith, who is Amanda from the Saw movies.
Yeah.
You've even got Eraserhead
playing
the Doctor.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there's just so many actors that you recognize from other films. So you just like they're all together in this one.
Yeah.
It's really good. I definitely, hands down, recommend the Blob. This horror remake just does everything right for me.
Yeah.
It ups the gore level and it creates a truly horrific depictions of a flesh-eating monster melting people to the bone. You know, the special effects hold up really well. It's just a shame some of the compositing and lighting doesn't work in some of the scenes.
Yeah.
But it has a great cast of recognisable character actors who all perform their parts incredibly well. The music is appropriate, but not very memorable, as it kind of takes a backseat to the monster effects. Some very memorable moments in the film just make this a must-watch for horror fans, and one that you'll come back to for seconds. Definitely check out the Blob remake.
I definitely recommend it as well. You know, like I said, I wasn't too sure if this would stand up next to the original. You know, I'm a bit of a connoisseur when it comes to 50s classic black and white sci-fi movies. I watched a lot of them when I was a kid. So when they say they're making a remake, I'm like, oh, I'm fucking on you. You best be fucking careful. And, you know, like I said, I loved The Thing. I loved the Invasion of the Body Snatchers movie. And then when I got to the Blob, I'm like, show me something. And it fucking showed me all of the effects, you know, even on their worst day, even on the worst effects in the Blob movie, you know, are better than some other movies do them. You know, the fact that a lot of it is all practical effects. So it's just great. You know, it will send shivers through your spine if you've not seen it. And if you have and you were wondering if you should watch it again, no, because it's scary as fuck and will give you nightmares.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
Beware of the blob, it creeps and leaps and glides and slides across the floor, right through the door and all around the wall. A splotch, be careful.